Hi, I'm Greg Euland with Reynolds & Reynolds, and this is Connected. Today I get to sit down with Sean Leibold, who is our Director of Industry Relations at Reynolds, and I'm really excited to talk with him about a lot of different things, but in a lot of ways getting connected with your community and what he's seen out there with dealers doing. So, Sean, thanks for taking time and sitting down.
No, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yep, for sure. So today is the last day of November, right? So we're coming off Thanksgiving. Yesterday was Giving Tuesday. We're coming in, well, we're actually in holiday season at this point, right? Christmas is coming up. So a lot of people, it's front of mind for them to think about giving back. And for many, it's front of mind all year round. But this time of year, for whatever reason, it really does seem to come to the forefront. You have an interesting background. Hopefully we can talk a little bit about that maybe to start. But you obviously, as a part of Reynolds, are involved in a ton of dealership events. And I think you've played in about every golf outing out there. The problem is that you never get invited back because you win them. But
and then they're trying to figure out why they paid me to go play golf, but that's okay. Yeah, that's right.
But before coming actually back to Reynolds, you spent maybe a decade or longer running a pretty major event in the Western and Southern Open, which is the pro tennis event leading up to the U.S. Open. So I guess maybe start talking a little bit about your background and your experience there, and then we can dive in.
Sure. Yeah. So like you said, I handled the sales and sponsorships at one of the top 9 events in the world as far as tennis is concerned. And when you handle sponsorships and partnerships, it takes on a unique element, and a lot of it has kind of transformed into what I do at Reynolds now. But some of that, to be kind of brief, is you try to create packages that are mutually beneficial to both sides, and how you come to those terms sometimes is getting very creative, and then how you step back and put yourself in the client's shoes to see, well, this is looking a little lopsided our way, or maybe a little lopsided their way, and to try to come to that middle ground on here's the way it's just going to be great for both sides. And so that was kind of the fun part about always trying to put these packages together. A lot of times you try to find an emotional appeal as well, and that's another thing that I've seen in a lot of the things that the dealerships are doing out in the communities. Once you find those emotional ties, then it becomes a little easier to have those packages created. I also see that you'll find certain leaders within organizations that have certain passions, and I've seen that in several of the dealership groups as well. And in my former life, I could always identify, I shouldn't say always, but I could identify sometimes those people that had certain special things in their lives, whether their child had autism or they've come from a breast cancer family, survivor or non-survivor, unfortunately. And so sometimes when you hit upon those emotional pieces, then it can take on a whole new life. So those are some of the things from my former life on how I would traditionally package or try to put together something that made sense for both sides. And finding the emotional ties is always a good way.
Yeah, do you see that pretty commonly too with dealerships? So a lot of dealers give back and get involved through events that are tied to a charity, right? So, right now I'm sporting the beard for the last day this year,
right?
Right, No Shave November. I mean, cancer in general is one of those things that has come a long way in the last half a century. There's a lot of ability to treat, but I don't think anybody would say that there's a cure and there's no prevention. So, it's a big, broad topic. But when you look at dealership events and those emotional ties, do you see that generally there's something kind of rooted in an individual or the owner of the store that leads them to a charity?
Almost 100% of the time. I mean, dealers are such great community people anyways. Yep. In all fronts. A lot of things don't even show up in the newspaper. Some dealers want them promoted, some don't. So you get a variation of those that they want to make donations to certain things. They don't even want it to be known, or they want to hold events and they want to hold it in somebody's name because it's a brother, a sister, a mom, a dad, a child that they're memorializing. And in a lot of cases, that gets even more support from the community or businesses that are going to support that financially and physically. We've got a few examples, around here locally, the Norman J. Ross Foundation, which, she was, stricken with breast cancer, but she was a huge community person as well, part of the Ross Automotive Group. And that one's taken on a whole new life. I mean, if you drive past their dealership, during October, it's all pink fascia, it's all on ribbons, and and Janelle does an amazing job memorializing her, and then has plenty of outings throughout the year to do that. You also have Mr. Hendrick down at the Hendrick Automotive Group. He's been doing a bone marrow matching program for decades, and I've been a part of that outing and that foundation, and that's been an amazing thing to watch. That talk about an emotional day. Usually I don't cry before I go golfing, but that one will make you cry in a happy way, because that one will show the donor with the person that received the donation or the match, and so it's usually for the very first time, and so you'll watch 200 golfers literally cry.
Yeah.
And in a good way.
Right.
And so, usually I cry at the end if I lose, but, I cry at the beginning. So anyway, so those are a couple just like recently top of mind.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So golf outings are a popular way to host an event and to raise some money. Yep. What are some other ones that you've seen be successful, just other types of events, if any? There's been, some higher end ones like polo events and you'll get a lot of, probably bigger type money at those kind of events, because a lot of times that'll take on a different, demographic of folks or companies that want to tie to those. And it goes kind of back to that sponsorship and matching piece of, sponsors want to be matched with certain demographics of clients. So, you don't serve, Pabst Blue Ribbon at a polo match. Right. You're serving Woodford or something that has a higher Moet, different things that. We'll say there's nothing wrong with PBR though.
I didn't mean to offend anyone, because I know that PBRs are popular around here, and probably soon to be on Friday. But I think a lot of it does have to do with the way that the sponsorships or the events tie back to the clients and that clientele. I think that's a huge way to get people involved.
Yeah. So how do you then, and I'm sure there's a lot of different ways, but what are some of the ways that you've seen be successful for dealers to select an event, right? So I think golf's a great one and it's an easy one. Mm-hmm. You mentioned polo. That's a unique one. But again, if you're going for more of a luxury higher end feel, that's a great option.
Correct.
What's a good way to determine what type of event? I mean, can you host a gala? Can you do something at the store? Can you rent out a space? Can you, I don't know, how do you make that decision? Do you go kind of the path of least resistance? Is that typically the best way, especially if you're just getting started, or what do you think?
No, I think it's a great question. I think it depends on what you're trying to achieve. What kind of dollars are you trying to raise? What kind of message are you trying to send? I think I would always try to look for ways that you can engage the clients and or the sponsors for a longer period of time. Okay. That's why I think golf outings work so well, because from a business perspective, if I'm sponsoring it, let's just say, and I get to have some clients come with me, there's really nothing else that you get 5 dedicated hours with a client. It's almost impossible. And you develop these relationships through that type of event. And whereas you just said, art events are another good one where you can tie it into some art and tie it into some cocktail hours and dinners that provide a little more engagement, and you get things to talk about. It's not just, okay, come for the dinner and then it's over. Make your donations, silent auctions. We've all done them. And those are great too, because those can provide a lot of, I'll call it kind of like free money. Mm-hmm. That's the money that people donated all the items. And then people went and bought all the items. Right. You had no real investment, whereas golf outings, you're going to have to invest into the golf outing a little bit. You're going to have to pay for the carts. You're going to have to pay for the course. Dinners, you're going to have to pay for food. Those are kind of they've got some hard costs in them. Mm-hmm. So when you're building them out, I think you have to determine, are you willing to make a significant investment into the event, knowing that you're going to get a significant investment out of the event, mm-hmm. or are you good with just making a couple dollars here and there? So I think it just all depends. Plus, I think you have to look at the community in which you're in too. I think, if you're in a bigger market that, you want to go after bigger dollars, then you're probably going to have a bigger event. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you're in a smaller market, maybe a 4-H kind of thing is more appropriate in rural areas, to where, you have a different type of, it's very casual, it's very country style, or it's very rural driven. Yeah. So, I think that's also another play, because you're not going to serve Moet. out in, Greene County or somewhere like that, you're going to serve probably some other items that,
Sure.
Are more applicable for that type of demographic.
Yeah, yeah. One of the phrases I've heard you use before, and I've kind of stolen on occasion, is this idea of frame-worthy moments, right? So
Yep.
if you're going to have a sponsor or any sort of attendee, giving them something, a memory that they can take a picture of and put it on the desk behind them,
That's
so
right.
it's in a frame.
Yep.
They can remember it, and it creates a longer-lasting experience. Talk about that a little bit, and how do you do that in all these different types of settings?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. That used to be really one of the major talk tracks when I was actually selling sponsorships. Now, as I'm on the other side of it, receiving the benefits from sponsorships, I look at those same things because, if you walk over to my desk, you'll see pictures of me with a lot of different, people and different events. And it always makes me think about that event. And to your point, if you're going to be a sponsor, you want to create that memorable event, or you want to create a reason why your account rep or your salesperson has an opportunity to go re-engage that person. Because at the end of the day, there also has to be some business ties to it too. Because if you're making an investment into an event, yes, you're doing it for a great cause, but there's also probably some business reasons why you want to do it as well. So yeah, the frame-worthy, the making memories, those kind of things, I think are super important when you're building these types of events. And I think some dealership groups do amazing jobs of that. Some do good jobs, and some I don't think they even think about it. But that's not their fault.
Right.
They just might not have somebody really throwing it out there.
Yeah, and I would add, and I'm curious, I want to bounce this off of you because I'm curious where your head's at, but I would think that for me at least, a frame-worthy moment centers around, and you mentioned it, but centers around the people there.
Correct.
Right? You don't have pictures of a clubhouse, right? You
Right.
have pictures of you and your friends, or you and fill in the blank, with that clubhouse in the background. Like
Correct.
the clubhouse is there to remind you where you were,
Correct.
but the memories stem from the people. So being present at these types of events and being active at these types of events and creating those emotional connections with people is, in my opinion, I think probably the most important piece.
Yep, I agree. I forgot one other great example, and you just made me remember it. Was I was just at a conference for NAMAD, and one of the booths they had a former Heisman Trophy winner.
Oh yeah,
and
who
so
was it?
He played for Nebraska. I forget, it was Rogers, I think. Yeah, his last name was Rogers,
Okay.
like the 70s.
Okay,
But he brought the Heisman Trophy.
that's pretty cool.
So at the booth, you could go over, and I mean, he was pulling you in too. It wasn't
Was
like he was just
Nissan there?
sitting there.
Was Nissan with the Heisman House? Were they there?
No, but that would have been kind of cool. Actually, that would have been really cool because those commercials are great. But no, you went over and he made you put your hand out with him, and he put his hand out, and then he wrote you a personal note on the picture. It was printed right there for you, and you took it away. Once
Very
again,
cool.
very memorable. And if you were a Nebraska fan, you were definitely gonna have that thing somewhere mounted. Even if you're not, it's a Heisman Trophy winner. That's a pretty significant thing and a memorable moment. So.
That's very cool.
Yep.
That's very cool. So, taking a step back, thinking about for dealers that, maybe are looking, they've given into their communities, and they're involved a lot, like most dealers are.
Yep.
I couldn't name one that I know that isn't, right, in some way, shape, or form.
I agree.
But for those that maybe are looking to scale up a little bit,
Yep.
and looking to have maybe a bigger impact or a bigger event and try to draw more, any thoughts on that? Any suggestions for that to go a little bit bigger scale? Maybe polo's not the right for their demographic, to your point,
sure.
but I don't know, just ways to broaden what they're doing.
I think one of the best ways would be is find either a regional celebrity or a regional sports hero or a current sports person that has that emotional tie to that type of foundation, or that type of event. So, i.e., would be if you can find somebody that, maybe they lost their mother, or their mother is a cancer survivor, or breast cancer survivor, and that happens to be your type of event, reach out to them. In most cases, they'll do it for free. And because they know you're raising money towards what they're probably working towards as well.
Yeah.
So you can keep some of that appearance money expense out of it, but raise the bar a little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe, you put them on a hole to where every single group gets to see them, have a backdrop, they get a picture with that person, they can, sign the picture on the spot and say thank you for your support, whatever that may be. But I think anytime you can increase like the personality at an event, that's always a huge win. Minus having like a slew of high-end sponsors or things that are provided. Another thing that I think is huge is to have a lot of activity when you're doing an event. So whether it's goofy things like, if you're you have big tennis rackets and big golf clubs and you're doing some sort of Framester kind of thing back in the day when Framester kind of became its cool little trendy thing, that still is kind of a fun thing for people to do. And but anytime you can get people to interact and not just one hit, but have them interacting all the time, whether it's, put on derby hats and everybody gets a picture, with a fake horse in the background, whatever that may be. I truly believe that the pictures become those memories, but also keeping your folks engaged throughout the course of the day or throughout the course of the event. It doesn't have to be a golf event. It can be just things sprinkled throughout, like a conference room that happens to be hosting a big dinner.
Yeah, it's all about the energy.
It really is. It really is.
The setting can be whatever.
Exactly. Getting people to laugh, getting people to open up. Once you tap into that laughter emotion, you've got them.
Yeah.
Crying, laugh. Okay, you got them both sides.
Well, so, either in a spectrum,
right?
Or
you don't want them depressed. You want them laughing or crying, but in a good way, crying. So yeah.
So how do you raise the most money possible, right? So you think about pick your charity, right? Whatever that charity is, and you've decided as an individual, as a company, as a dealership group, that you're going to give X dollars to this charity, right?
Yep.
And you're also going to host an event. So there's a certain amount of money that's going into that event, right? Correct. You're going to host an event that's intention is to raise money, right? And there's different ways to do that. You mentioned silent auctions and you mentioned sponsors, and so how do you maximize that? Because clearly you're doing this for the impact, right? For
Correct.
the giving, and many dealers will match what they raise, or like I said, at a minimum, provide a donation on their own as well. But how do you maximize that? How do you make the most out of your event, or get the most from sponsors or even people attending?
Great question, and went through this exercise probably hundreds of times. First, you try to align yourself with an event that will be heavily supported throughout the community. You try to also find ways to completely eliminate expenses altogether, because obviously there's a net effect to that. Yep. If you can find, I'll stay on the golf theme, but the theme can be moved all over the place. Sure. But find a golf course that's willing to allow you to play for free. Okay, if you did something else for them down the road, sure. Or sometimes you have to pass along the expense to those that are attending, but if you can prevent it and you can keep it at a good level, that's always a good thing. Find a conference center that wants to promote themselves, okay, for weddings or for whatever it may be, and ask them for either significant discounts or, look, we'll pay for the catering. Reach out to your local distributor. They'll donate most of the product, meaning beer, meaning wine, if you tell them what the cause is going against. Sure. Because I've worked with a ton of those types of people, and they have a lot of line items for charitable donations. So, just tapping into the creativity of the network, and car dealers are so connected. Obviously, they've got, friends in almost every single genre and category of business, that it's just a matter of them probably having an individual that knows how to work those kind of routes. Yeah. So I learned it through default, right? Yeah. But I had a decade of it to learn it. Now I know it really well, but it's just kind of like our golf outing for the Associate Foundation. Mm-hmm. I threw it at the team. I said, why don't we have sponsors? They're like, wow, we just never really thought about it. I said, so why don't we just reach out to those that we spend the most money with outside of Reynolds? Mm-hmm. Next thing you know, several of our people that we spend a lot of money with, one is very close and near to your heart, and they do a lot of stuff at NADA. They were gracious enough to offer a nice little sponsorship check, and that's another piece on how to raise a lot of money, is look at those that you're spending money with. Yeah. No, that's good. And then, so thinking about, just hearing you talk, just real briefly right there, that's a lot. It is. It's not like you just make it happen, right? So how do you organize it? Who organizes it? Like, does a person have to own it? Is this a person that's just really passionate? Do you need a team to do it? What works? Because it's not, you can't just go down a checklist and voila, it's done. Right. There's a lot that goes into this. There is. I think you have to have one person that heads it up. Then I think you create subcommittees that literally create, okay, so you have a food and beverage committee, or you have just a food committee, you have a beverage committee, you have an entertainment committee, and those people kind of chair those committees. And those are the ones that break it down into or like actionable item kind of things, as opposed to staying up here. Now, okay, well, I'm going to reach out to Budweiser. I'm going to reach out to Miller Lite. Whoever's going to pick that gets to be our guy and gal. Okay, I'm going to reach out to, Presidential Banquet Center and NCR Country Club. And whoever wants that, that's going to be that. So then they start managing those relationships, and they start managing what the process is going to look like, the catering, the food, the event, the time, the schedule. Then they ask for, internal volunteers. I think that then there's a volunteer committee that person just in charge of getting volunteers. Yep. I know we have a team over here that does a lot of that for the Associate Foundation fundraising, but you can just never have enough volunteers. And I think some things that, dealerships probably do in some cases, but, tap into, your retirement centers, those types of places where they're always looking for those kind of things for getting their folks involved and stuff that make them active, get them out in the community, so.
Well, you can even develop, thinking about that type of place. I mean, you can even develop an ongoing relationship there, right?
Exactly.
Where you're giving back and you're helping out, because there's always hands that are needed there too.
Absolutely.
So that's a good point of just looking for ways to not just give and not just get, but really find opportunities to partner with whatever it is, whether it's an organization like a retirement community. That's a great idea, or a sponsor, right? How can we help you? How can you help us? And just kind of merging those two together. You probably get the best output that way. You do. The best experiences, the best people, the most smiles.
You do. And you get people that are excited about being out there, And I'll use the example from when I was at the tennis event. We had 1,400 volunteers. The average tenure was like 22 years of volunteering at the tennis tournament.
That's crazy.
So, these are people that would take vacation just to go volunteer. So if you think about that, it's almost kind of a misnomer on why you would take a vacation to go volunteer. And some would come from other states, as far as like California, to volunteer at the tournament just because that's what they wanted to do.
Wow.
And that was their passion. So you tap into those little nooks and crannies and communities, and you can find passionate churches, things that, they're looking to do good things in the community, and maybe you just never thought about tapping them on the shoulder.
Yeah. So what's your favorite story from that tennis tournament? I mean, you were there for a while. There's got to be some good ones.
Believe it or not, my favorite story, one of my favorite stories, was, I had kind of like, I don't want to say a bad feeling about this particular person, but they never rubbed me the right way. And I met them several times. And I always try to give them the benefit of the doubt, but they're a humongous superstar in the world of women's tennis. And so her name's Serena Williams, if anybody's ever heard of her. And so one of the coolest and cutest stories ever was, so I was given a tour to one of the CEOs of a company. He had his 11-year-old daughter with him. And I got them both credentials, so they had their names, and I was taking them back behind the scenes. And so Serena just lost. And that was like almost unheard of that early. Yeah. And so we're going up the elevator, and Serena, gets on with the WTA agent, and just me, the little girl, and the CEO, Serena, and the agent. Mm-hmm. And Serena's always been known to not take losing very well. And, I'm like, oh.
Yeah, that's a lot of us, though.
I'm like, true. And I was like, oh, Lord, just let her just get to the floor and go to the press conference. Next thing you know, she looks down. She goes, well, hi, Aubrey. What's your name? And the little girl looks up at me like, oh, my God, and looks up at Serena like, oh, my God, is she really talking to me?
Yeah.
And she's like, did you have a good day? And she goes, yeah. And Serena goes, well, I didn't, but that's okay. And so it was just kind of one of those funny things. And she gave her like a little hug because she was, all sweaty from her match and everything. But I thought that was one of the coolest things ever. The girl will never forget it.
Absolutely.
And and as soon as Serena got off the elevator, I looked at the CEO, and I was trying to do a sponsorship with him. I go, was that any good? And so he goes, that was really good. He goes, did you plan that? And I go, no, I did not. So
just got lucky.
I wish I did.
Just got lucky. That's funny.
That's right. Yeah.
So thinking about, all the events then that you've been to at dealers, what's maybe your most memorable, and not to downplay any of the others, but
right. No, for sure.
You mentioned the one that Mr. Hendrick puts on with the bone marrow transplant and the donors, and
Yep.
that's obviously very emotional. So it's certainly memorable. You brought that up. Any others stand out to you?
I would say that one over the course of its years has been the most impactful to me, just in watching what he has done with the money and the resources that he's gotten through that foundation,
yeah.
and the lives he has truly, he saved through that.
Mm-hmm.
It is it's a very difficult piece to perform, matching people with bone marrow. It's very painful for those that want to donate it. But once you have that bank of people, then there's a whole nother process behind those scenes to go find the match, and how well does the body receive. Not to go into the long story, but after hearing all those stories and watching the people meet and seeing how many people were touched by it, it just truly just makes it the most impactful event I've ever played in my entire life.
No, that's great.
Or been a part of.
Yeah. No, that's great to hear. It's great to hear. All right. Well, Sean, we've talked, decent amount here. What haven't we talked about? Anything that we haven't hit on that you want to touch on before we kick out of here?
I think just through all of these types of events, it's amazing, like the friendships and the relationships that you develop through the ones that have these emotional ties, and the ones that have such great causes behind them. I think that I encourage, dealerships to continue to do it, and I know they will. Mm-hmm. But to even up their game in a lot of ways to make them even that much more impactful or that much more emotional, so people want to continue to fight to find that last spot or that last table to get at the banquet or whatever it may be. Because I think when you create that buzz around your event, I think that's what truly does it for both the participant, the people involved, the volunteers, the sponsors, all those types of things. So once you hit on those, you're starting to hit home runs, not singles.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. Well, appreciate you sitting down. It's a great conversation as always. Thanks for all you do for us, and stay involved. I know that you're out there constantly, making sure that putting your best foot forward and our best foot forward. So appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Greg.
Yep. Have a good one.
You too.
Wow, what a great conversation with Sean. Definitely appreciate him sitting down and taking time. I hope you enjoyed that one as much as I did. Before we hop off, don't forget, you can watch or listen to all episodes of Connected on YouTube, Apple, or Spotify podcasts. And make sure to hit subscribe so you're notified every other Wednesday when new episodes are released. Thanks so much, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.